Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Sorry we're running a little bit late. Again, thank you for attending tonight's meeting, which is March 4th, 2021. It's currently about 5:15. And if you would, please rise as Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales leads us in the invocation, which will be followed by our pledge from City Secretary Jana Llewellyn.
Pray with me, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come humbly before you to thank you for the opportunity to gather today. And we ask your hand and blessings on this meeting and for the residents of this city and all that we serve. Father, you are our comfort, you are our shield, and you are our hope. In light of these events which have drained us all, we cling to you, Lord. We need you and you alone. Continue to be with us each day, Father, and whatever comes our way, let us not forget you are our hope. Thank you for the strength that is found in your name. Bless our leaders, both nationally and locally, our mayor, our city council and staff, with the wisdom to guide in the right direction that will bring peace, harmony, and unity in our community. And whatever we do, let it be pleasing to you, Father. We continue to pray for those who are hurting or lonely today, that you will comfort them. And we pray for those all who are ill, that you will heal them, especially those who are suffering from the coronavirus and other illnesses. We thank you for the vaccine that will save many lives. We pray for those who have suffered through the ice storm that we have just experienced. We pray and ask for your blessings for all those who open their hearts and their facilities to offer a warm, safe place for many of our neighbors during this difficult time. Give blessings and protection to all the first responders, our doctors, our nurses, our police, our firemen, and all those who are working to help and give comfort to those who are hurting. We pray that our mind and hearts will not be shaken by these circumstances, but that we will lean hard on your presence, your peace, and your love. Thank you for being our hope and our strength today, Father. We thank you and we love you. We ask this in the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Now we'll move on to item 2, which is public comments. Citizens who desire to address the council on any matter may do so, as long as you've signed up prior to this meeting. Please understand that no discussion or final action will be taken by the council. We have 4 folks that have signed up. Amanda, is it Sudez? Oh, very good. Yes, ma'am.
So I wanted to stand up here today and talk a little bit about the polar vortex and how all that kind of affected our community. I had a hard time getting to and from work, but I was there one day and I was thinking about how to help people. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, there's so many people that need help. I'm just one person. Like, how can I do that? And I was standing outside my patient's room and we have these little sayings on the door. And it said, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. And I thought, okay, I'll take that as a cue. So with Terrace, we had kind of come up with this concept of putting together hygiene kits for people. And I thought, well, I can't do a whole lot, but I'll secure 10. So 10 was my goal. And a big part of that was going to be 5-gallon buckets. So well, let me see what I can do as far as donations. So I called Lowe's, I called Home Depot. They couldn't help me. And this was like on a Saturday or Sunday, something like that. Relatively it was some point on the weekend because I still had to go to work that day. So I said, well, all I'm left with is Lingofield lumber. So I called Jessica. I didn't even call her. I think I just sent her a Facebook message. And I said, hey, like, I kind of want to do this. I don't know how it's going to be received, if people actually need it, but I'd like to my goal is 10. Can you help me? And so she went out there that day and looked all through the back, found 5, or actually I think 10 5-gallon buckets, and actually came and dropped them off for us. And then from that, Terrace was able to get some of the hygiene kits from a local church, and we took those out to one of the apartment complexes that didn't have water. Well, those buckets were gone within 5 or 10 minutes. So what I wanted to highlight was her willingness to just do something so small, helped us identify what was actually a big need in that area. And we were out there yesterday and there were still residents, with their 5-gallon buckets going around filling up their water. What I think happened was from that, we were able to reach out to Police Chief Reynolds. I think either way, somehow more buckets got out to the community, which is great. But without her willingness to make that initial step, we probably wouldn't even identified that something so small was a big need for those people. So I wanted to come up here and say thank you and just make sure that that wasn't overlooked.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's sweet of you. I don't want to downplay anything that you just said about Councilmember Walker, but that happened all over town. There were so many people that did so many little things that helped so many. It was very gratifying. So thank you for taking the time to come up here and speak to that. Next is Don Biddle. Good.
I was just addressing this proposal about annexing out on Highway 93, or 95 rather. How can we find out more information? Because I don't want to do it. I'm a homeowner there. I've been there 20 years, and all these different changes that they're trying to make, I'm gonna take this thing off. With the water lines and the sewer, and I have the aerobic system, and I just had a brand new one installed. And now they're, the guys that was out there putting the flags up was telling me I got to move my fence back and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to be annexed out. I'm happy where I'm at. And will there be some kind of grandfather clause? We like to dove hunt out there. Is there any answers to any of those questions?
So in this format, it's not something that we can just talk about at large, but if you will, and Ms. Llewellyn, if you will, your office or someone will reach out.
It's actually on the agenda tonight.
Okay. And of course, then she can speak at that time too. Public hearing? Okay. Yeah, so we'll actually cover that shortly.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, we'll be able to have an open discussion.
Okay.
It's just,
All right. Thank you.
You bet. The next person is Ray. I can't read your last name. D-I-S? Okay. All right. Very good. And then Terrace Goodwin.
Hi, my name's Terrace Goodwin. I'm the founder of Wake Up Temple. And I'm the first one to be vocal and say, hey, we need to, pay closer attention, maybe ask some tough questions and have difficult conversations. But I also do think it's important as well to express gratitude when it's due. As Amanda expressed a little bit earlier, that gesture by Lingafield Lumber and Jessica Walker kind of initiated a bigger chain of events that ultimately ended up with an apartment complex who is still without water over 2 weeks later, getting some resources to them. And a big part of that was due to the police chief and the city manager staying actively involved in communicating with community leaders, not only listening, but then going and implementing those. So, buckets to food distribution, those things were, excuse me, I haven't eaten today. It's been a long day. Those are things that were just immensely helpful, and those residents who are still without water, those resources that we were able to coordinate because of that willingness to collaborate with community members, community organizations, was just great. And so I want to publicly say thank you to Bryn and the police chief. I know I don't say thank you a lot, but I'm grateful. So thank y'all.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. All right. Item 3 is to receive the City of Temple Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2020. Ms. Bernard?
Let me start over.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
According to the city charter of the City of Temple, an annual audit is required to be made of the financial records of the city by a certified public accountant selected by the city council. City council has engaged the firm of Brockway, Gershbach, Franklin, and Niemeyer, PC. And tonight, the City of Temple's comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020 will be presented by Christine Wells, which is a partner with the accounting firm of Brockway, Gershbach, Franklin, and Niemeyer, and will be available to address the council members' questions. Ms. Wells.
Thank you, Tracy. Mayor, council members, city management, thank you all for being here. I'm sure this is the number one thing you were looking forward to talking about tonight. Like she said, my name is Christine Wells. I'm a audit partner at BGFN. A lot easier to say than all the words. I'm going to talk about the audit and the comprehensive annual financial report. Does it work? Thank you. Next one, please. So I just want to say the city finance staff do an amazing job helping with this audit, but they do an even more amazing job on keeping good, clean books. And some of the ways that we see the effort that they put into this is Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. They've received that for 25 consecutive years. And then another prestigious award is the Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting. They've received that for 39 consecutive years. So a lot of hard work and effort goes into it, and it shows through these awards. Another layer of complication for this year, obviously with COVID restrictions in trying to maintain safety protocols, being careful. The city stepped up and still made sure that this happened on time. They gave me access to everything I needed and made themselves available when that needed to happen. So very much appreciated on that. Next slide, please. What is an audit? What do we do? Thanks, Alan. Ah, that one works. Awesome. What do we do for our audit? Well, part of what we do is we verify balances as of year end September 30th, 2020. What does that look like? Well, we verify $758 million of assets, and we also verify $473 million of liabilities as of year end. And then we like to test the activity that happens throughout the year, and what that looks like in context is $148 million in different revenue streams, $60 million in payroll, $77 million in operating expenses, and $73 million in capital asset and debt payments. And then another piece that we look at for the CAFR is single audit. So if the city receives and spends more than $750,000 of federal funds, they're required to have a single audit. That means that we come in and we make sure that they are in compliance with their grant agreements, that they spent the money appropriately on allowed expenses, and they used it on the right things. All that to say, the very end part of that, what we're here for is that we issued an unmodified opinion. That means that we did not find any material misstatements. We have no reportable conditions that we need to tell you about. So it's basically a thumbs up, which is what we're all looking for. So financial highlights. Let's talk about what happened from October 1st, 2019 through September 30th, 2020. What a year it has been. We did not plan for the pandemic, obviously, but the city has maintained financial health through these challenges. And we're going to see how that plays out in more of the slides that we're going to get to. One of the things that we looked at, the local economy is still strong in Temple. We see that by the increase in the number of properties, and the increase in the property values indicates that people are still moving here. One of the cool things that we got to review with Tracy is housing permits up 20% from last year. That's huge. So even during a pandemic, we're still building, people are still moving here, so there's still a strong economy. We like to talk about new businesses. We have several businesses that have planned expansions in town. We have Niagara, who had a planned expansion for a little bit later on, but they've moved it up. And then we have Langfeld Lumber, Sunbelt Solomon, and HEB all have planned expansion, so that will provide more jobs for the city of Temple. Another positive thing. Revenues overall, the city had a 22.5% increase in water and sewer revenues, a 9% increase in property tax revenues, 5.5% increase in sales tax, and received an additional $3 million of grant funds. And we're going to dive deeper into that in a couple of slides and talk about why some of those things increased. So expenditures, governmental expenditures, those actually decreased $1 million over last year. And then on the water sewer side, those actually increased $5 million, and we'll talk about more of that in a couple slides as to why that increased. Bottom line, on a government-wide basis, net position increased $13.5 million. So even during a pandemic, even during times of maybe where we were worried about revenues, the city still maintained financial health, kept expenses in line. So all positive things there. So where did we spend some of that money when we invest in the future? The city spent $53.7 million in capital assets. That could be a wide range of things, whether we're working on new streets, new buildings, buying right-of-way to be able to build infrastructure. On bonds, we issued $24.3 million in bonds for the government and refunded a little bit. And then in the zone, they actually refunded $15 million and replaced it with about almost $17 million of bonds. Whenever the interest rate is low, it's always smart for the city to refund more expensive debt and pick up cheaper debt. So that's a positive thing there. Our net pension liability for TMRS decreased $14.2 million, and it actually increased how much our pension liability was funded. So that's a very positive thing. Has to do with the market. We'll get into that. The net pension liability for the fireman's pension increased just a little bit, but the funded amount stayed around the same. Another liability that you guys have to deal with is OPEB, some other post-employment benefits. That stayed about the same. So I want to dig a little bit more into the debt issuances. We issued almost $21 million, the combination tax and revenue certificates, and that is for infrastructure improvements. We issued 2.75 in the limited tax notes, and that is for the purchase of sanitation, street equipment, and vehicles, much needed. And then, as I talked about before, we reissued some debt to reduce some costs here. So we replaced $17 million of bonds with some cheaper $17 million bonds. This reduces the debt payments $2 million over the next 13 years, but in today's money, by doing that, refunding the debt saved the city $1.7 million. So. All right, we get to dig into some revenues. The bottom color, I'm going to call that some avocado green. That's our water and sewer services. This is about 27% of our total. You're going to see an increase in this one. There's a little bit of a dip in 2019. If you remember, 2019 had pretty heavy rainfall, actually twice as much as 2018. So a little bit of a dip in the revenue in 19, but in 20, not as much rainfall. We had more consumption and we had a rate increase. So all those factors are the reason why the water and sewer revenues have increased in 2020. The next in the teal, that is governmental services. There's actually a small drop in governmental service revenues. This is to be expected with COVID. Areas where we saw some decreases, Lions Junction, no swimming this year. Blooming Fest, the Summit, rental facilities, airport fuel, all of those had decreases in revenue. And that would show up in your governmental services. Areas that did well, People still had lots of garbage. We were still recycling a lot, and people did not give up on golf. So revenues are still strong in the golf area. Property taxes, this is about 21% of the total. Property taxes increased about $3.5 million over last year. There's a couple of reasons for that. 85% of that increase is due to more properties, larger tax base. And then the other 15%, which is a small portion, is just the slight increase in the tax rate from 0.66 to 0.67. So very small portion of that. But overall, property taxes increased about $3.5 million over last year. Then we move into sales tax. You would think sales tax would have suffered during a pandemic, but that is actually not the case. Over the last 5 years, sales taxes increased 15%, but we saw a 6% increase just in the last year. Part of the reason for that is the Wayfair decision. So if you buy something online on Amazon, you had to buy some toilet paper, paper towels, whatever you had to buy during the pandemic. Before, the city didn't receive sales tax on that. Now they do. So there's a portion of that we're starting to receive. Well, as you can imagine during the pandemic, lots of people buying more and more stuff online. So that's driving your sales tax number there. Next, we've got franchise fees. This is a relatively consistent revenue for the city. I didn't see a whole lot of change in this one, but it didn't drop. So that's a positive thing. And then all other. At the top, we've kind of got the all other revenue in that bright aqua color. You see a little bit of a gain in 2019. We had some contributed capital in there. We had great interest in 2019. In 2020, it drops a little bit. Interest rates weren't as great in 2020. We had a little bit less in our hotel motel taxes as well. So that's where that small decrease comes in. Ellen, it stopped working again. Oh, thank you much. Now we're going to talk about some expenses. First, the blue at the very bottom, this is our water sewer services. Just as I talked about in the revenue side, revenues increased for it. It's reasonable to see an increase in the water sewer side on the expense side because we increase the amount that the water sewer fund pays to the general fund for helping run it. So admin fees, franchise fees, those kind of things. Plus you have more people that you're servicing. So that's going to drive the increase in the expense there. Public safety, this is your largest expense for the city. It makes up about 29% of the total. Average increase is about 6% over the last 5 years. We saw about a 3.7% increase from 19 to 20. Part of those reasons we're adding a few more positions and market rate studies that have happened over the years. There's salary increases that go with that. General government, like we saw in the revenues dropped a little bit for general government, and on the expense side, expenses have decreased. There was a 4% drop this year. That goes in line with, in correlation with the revenues. Culture and leisure, this is about 11% of your total. Also a drop in this. So with all these places, Lions Junction, the Summit, all your recreational programming not happening, you're going to have less temporary staff to pay, less utilities, so on and so forth with that. So it is reasonable to see a decrease in culture and leisure. Next up is our highways and streets. The city continues to invest in our highways and streets. You can tell that a lot of the roads are very well taken care of. Lots of planning goes into building roads, but also maintaining roads. Some of the projects that were covered in 2020, there were improvements to Hogan Road, still picking up land parcels on Poison Oak so that can be expanded, and then lots of drainage projects and lots of planning going into projects for 2021. Sanitation, 6.5% of the total. It's grown steadily over the last 5 years. It also goes in line with more people moving to Temple, more need for garbage pickup. So there's just more cost with sanitation. I know those guys were working extremely hard during COVID, trying to pick up all the extra trash. You cleaned out their garage during COVID? No? Lots of extra trash? Yeah. All right, so we talked about revenues, we talked about expenses. What's left over? It's our net position, that's what's left over. Our equity, our fund balance. What I want to point out on this slide, fund balance year over year has increased. The whole total has gotten bigger every year. So from last year to this year, it increased $13.5 million. You'll notice that the blue part, $169 million, that is what we invest in net capital assets. So if we take all of our fixed assets and we subtract any related debt to it, that's the amount that we've got invested in roads, streets, buildings, everything that the city has built for years. The yellow part represents a restricted amount. That's just a very small amount that we have to restrict for debt. It's constant over the years. And then our green part is unrestricted. We have $12.5 million for this year. We're going to get into a couple things of what affects this unrestricted portion on the next slide. Pensions and other post-employment benefits, something else that's super exciting to talk about. But when you hire someone, you have to plan for how long they're going to work, when they're going to retire, being able to pay out their retirement, and then benefits afterwards. Lots of planning goes into this. But about 5 years ago, the GASB said, hey, we want to start recording this in a little bit different way. And so back in 2015, we started recording our pensions a little bit different. And then in 18, we picked up our other post-employment benefits a little bit different. But all in all, these liabilities were larger than they were before. Lots of assumptions go into the actuary's calculation, deciding how long someone's going to work, how long they think they might use retirement, when they might pass. All of those factors go into what the liability should be for this, for pensions and OPEB. So what this slide shows is if we took all that back off the books and we added it back to our unrestricted net position, that very bottom line, that would show what our unrestricted net position would be without those liabilities. And what that line tells me is that unrestricted is pretty steady over the years. So that also tells me that the city is doing a good job of planning, trying to make sure that there is money set aside to handle these liabilities for years in the future, not just today. And when you guys are looking at financial health and being able to take care of expenses every day, you guys are looking at fund statements, and fund statements are extremely healthy. There is 21.6 million in unrestricted on the general fund side, and then on the water sewer side, there's over 23 million in unrestricted to take care of your ongoing operations. So it's a little bit harder to see because we get to see it on a very wide scale, government-wide basis where you guys get to look at the fund level statement. And I will not go into that because you guys get to do that with quarterlies here in a bit. So when I'm talking about net pension liability and all these factors that go into it, another big factor that goes into it is our discount rate, or the rate at what we think the investments need to make in order to fund this liability in a period of time. So the actuaries come up with a discount rate of 6.75%, meaning we're going to keep adding to our pool that's going to pay out our retirement, and we need to make that amount of money on it, 6.75% every year after this. The reason I'm showing you this is if we change that percentage 1 point lower or 1 point higher, it can have a dramatic effect on what the liability is. For instance, if we only made 5.75% on the assets that we have set aside for retirement, our liability jumps up to $57.5 million. Now, if we decide we think that we're going to get 7 3/4 return on our asset set aside, the liability drops quite a bit. So depending on the rate that we have in here and then how the market actually does can have a dramatic effect on our pension liability. The finance people work with the actuary on making sure that these assumptions that are put into this calculation are as true as possible, are as fair as possible. So, and they continue to budget for these changes because you can have some big swings depending on the changes in the assumptions. So. All right, the reinvestment zone. This is something that's unique to Temple. It's a very neat thing to have. I'm going to make a food reference. If you have a chicken fried steak, the best thing to have on top is some gravy. So I think of this as the gravy for Temple. Temple does some really cool projects, but the zone really helps push some big projects that maybe the city wouldn't be able to take on. And there's some great visionaries on the board that are helping bring some of these projects together. But I like to talk about this because I want to look at what the zone is investing in. And so at the very bottom there, we've got land. They're picking up land every year, and that's mostly right-of-way that they'll use to build infrastructure. The teal part is your construction in progress. That's about 26% of the total. That represents projects that are ongoing that weren't quite finished as of September 30th. Lots of projects going on, and you can tell from 2016 to 2020, we're increasing the amount that we're doing. Some cool projects that you guys have gotten to see, the Santa Fe Plaza. That is actually still in CIP. It's not quite finished. There's still some items in there, but huge project that got to be pushed forward. And then we have like the 31st Street roundabout, and then outer loop projects. So it's a great thing that the zone can push these projects and get neat things to happen to bring pieces of the city together. The downtown area looks fantastic. You think about what it looked like 10 years ago and what it looks like now. This just helps bring more people to Temple. Okay, I'm sure you got all of that. It's perfectly clear. What questions can I answer for you?
Council, any questions?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes.
I mean, it's the truth.
It is.
That is a lot. One thing that I appreciate about the city is that, we always budget conservatively. Dollars are handled well. And, and ultimately we know that our accounting staff is top notch, and through the planning of executive staff down through the accounting staff, every year that I've sat on this council has always been good news. And even during difficult financial times, it's still been good news. And I think that's a testament to the principles of what we do here.
Absolutely.
So I'm proud of everyone that's involved in that. I don't know that there's another, I don't know of anybody else that does as much as the city of Temple does with the tax rate that we have.
Yes.
So good job.
Yeah. If you guys think of anything else or any questions that come to mind later, please just feel free to email me, reach out.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Wells.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item 4, which is the first reading and a public hearing to receive a municipal service plan and conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the possible annexation of 23.917 plus or minus acres of land situated in the Maximo Merino Survey, abstract number 14, Bell County, Texas, being a section of Old Highway 95 right-of-way, commencing approximately 4,250 feet north of its intersection with FM 93 and extending approximately 2.01 plus or minus miles south of its intersection with FM 93. Mr. Chandler.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good to see all of you, and especially Councilmember Long. Welcome back. Absolutely. Good to see you. And so as a reminder, this is the first of 2 public hearings. So the second one will be tomorrow starting at 10:30, same place. And unfortunately, same presentation unless you all want to see something else. And so just to remind you about what this is about, what's before you, and this is a voluntary annexation initiated by Bell County for a county road, and this is Old Highway 95. And as was mentioned, the item description, it's about 4,200 feet north of FM 93 and just over 2 miles south of FM 93. So it's just the street right of way and no private property on either side. So voluntary annexation that would enable future voluntary annexations, including what is shown in an aqua color, the Daniel tract of 229 acres, which abuts the railroad. And so it was not able to be annexed previously without having a roadway to make it contiguous. And so just looking at the quick schedule, petition was approved on January 21st, and we initiated the municipal service plan development at that point, circulated to all relevant departments. There were no issues. Of course, we got the first public hearing today, next one tomorrow. And then, and this is the old annexation process because this is right-of-way annexation. So a bunch more steps. You may recall when we had all these meetings for previous annexations, well, we're doing it again for right-of-way. And so first reading for the ordinance on April 1st, second reading on April 15th. And so there are no capital improvements along this roadway proposed currently, but we would maintain it moving forward for that section of Old Highway 95. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know that there were some concerned neighbors, so happy to address whatever concerns they have. But just to reiterate, their properties are not affected by this, other than if they decided they ever wanted to annex their property, bring it into the city, have city services, then if they front on Old 95, then they would have the option to request a petition. But we're pretty much, not pretty much, voluntary annexation is the only way that annexations can happen in Texas cities.
So right now, there's no forced connection to the city water system. It's not out there.
Correct.
And can you address the possibly moving a fence out of a right of way or anything like that?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
I think that Miss Biddle is going to ask about possibly moving a fence.
Got it. The fence, yes, ma'am. Your fence location would not be affected by this. Your fence is on your private property, and either way, the right-of-way width for the road is not going to change as a result of this. It just means that the roadway would be in the city limits, which would allow future annexations, not your property, and ultimately the city would be responsible for maintaining that roadway moving forward.
Okay. Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler before I open the public hearing? Thank you, sir. Okay. Hold on. Let me open the public hearing. So this item is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. And please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Dolores Diskin, and I have property at 6875 Old Highway 95. And we've been hearing a lot of information from different people that there is going to be a new water line that's going to be going along both sides of the property and possibly a new, I'm sorry, on both sides of the street, and possibly a new sewer line on both sides of the street. With this annexation going into effect, would that encompass some of our property being damaged or destroyed as the lines are being put in place?
Mr. Chandler, would you like to address that?
Mayor, I think there are no water or sewer extensions planned along this roadway. We do have an active capital improvement project along Hartrick Bluff, but not along this roadway. So,
Okay. And
they're
that was stated in the presentation.
right. No road improvements, no water improvements, no sewer improvements. There's no capital improvements associated with this annexation at this time.
And in the future, there could be if needed.
I don't think our master plan contemplates any need for a water line or sewer line. It's served in a different way.
Okay.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure, you may address questions to the council.
Yeah, yes, another
Yes,
question
yes,
as
yes,
far as
ma'am.
what she has said. The property that they're speaking of annexing, the 229 acres that's down the road, how would you propose that annexation without providing them with all the city's amenities, without putting in the sewer and the water lines that I'm speaking of?
Yeah, that, Ms. Myers said that would be, that property would be supplied from a different route than up Old 95.
Thank you.
You bet. Anyone else?
So with that being said, there is all colored flags at my driveway and at each end of my property. And they were saying that they're tearing all those, the power poles out, putting all new power poles. And you're saying that this isn't taking place? They're not putting in all new power poles? And
This-
then they were saying that, and this is your people that's out here putting these flags up in my yard, all in my ditch, all in my driveway, that they're putting in new power poles and I have to move my fence 5 foot from the power pole.
So the city of Temple doesn't, again, we don't have any capital projects planned. I'm not aware of if there's an Encore project, which would be the company that owns the power lines and that related infrastructure. Does anybody from engineering or planning know if they have a project in the area?
Good evening. Encore has a project to update or upgrade their transmission main all the way down to 93.
Okay.
So
So that is not a City of Temple project.
it is not.
Very good.
Sam, do you understand that the distinction that this is an encore, what you're referring to is an encore project with the power lines, it's not the City of Temple.
Hey, Alan, look, how do I get rid of
It's the electric provider.
nothing? It's okay, leave
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this matter? Okay, very good. Then at this time, I will close the public hearing on item number 4, and we
couldn't
will
make
take
it
it
do
back
that.
up tomorrow.
You're brilliant.
Moving on to item number 5 is the consent agenda. All items listed under this item, which is called the consent agenda, are may be enacted by one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any council member and will be considered separately. Earlier, whenever we met in our workshop, it was decided that we would remove item 5D and 5W from the consent agenda for voting purposes right now.
Mayor, I don't think you need to remove item D. We just wanted to give you an update on that. I mean, you're certainly welcome to, but I don't think there's any need to remove that unless you want to.
I made my notes incorrect. I apologize. The item D is the
Item D was the rejection of the vehicle bid so that we could explore
I'm
four-wheel
sorry.
drive.
Yep, I got that mixed up. Okay, very good. Sorry about that, folks. So at this time, council, if there's no discussion on this, I will entertain a motion for approval on item 5A through 5Z minus item 5W.
Mayor, I move
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would please cast your vote.
Alan, I'm sorry. Oh, maybe it's working. It worked. Never mind. Sorry.
Item 5, A through Z minus W passes 5-0. Moving on to item 5W is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of a property situated at 1176 South 16th and to authorize closing costs. Council, this is the item that's been requested to be tabled at this time. So I'll entertain a motion on item 5W.
Mayor, I make a motion to adopt for approval.
Mayor, we were actually seeking to table the item because we have a typo in the address. So instead of moving to approve, if you would consider moving to table.
Make a motion to table.
Table. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
We have a motion to table by Councilmember Morales, and we have a second of that motion by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please vote on your system. Item passes 5-0. Mr. Bond? Mr. Bond? I'm sorry. Would y'all mind taking that side conversation out? Sort of disturbing. Okay, moving on to item number 6, which is the regular agenda. Item 6 is a first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance approving an amendment to ordinance 2020-5061, City of Temple Comprehensive Plan, Chapter 4, to amend the future Thoroughfare Plan. Mr. Chandler.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And so this is our first round of Thoroughfare Plan amendments associated with the 2020 comp plan. So I get pretty excited about those kind of things. And speak of the devil, this is the Thoroughfare Plan. You'll recognize that. And it provides future development guidance for road classifications, widths, sidewalk locations, et cetera. And just a little bit of background that you'll recall, as opposed to the previous Thoroughfare Plan, this one broke out the collector category into two, a community collector as well as a neighborhood collector. And so we will present 4 major amendments to you. We'll also present some minor amendments that the comp plan actually envisions. Some of them are just corrections and can be done administratively, but this is the first round, so we wanted to just share that with you. And so starting with those minor amendments, there are 13 minor changes, and 4 of them are associated with the Bel Air Neighborhood Plan, which you all just approved on the consent agenda and had a great presentation by Aaron, Assistant City Manager, at the workshop. And so this is something that we plan to do in the future, is as these more zoomed in types of discussions for the neighborhood plans come to you all when there are changes to the thoroughfares, then we would also put them on the same agenda. So some of this is just cleanup also related to other outstanding items that we need to take care of. But there's another associated with the Ferguson Park neighborhood plan. And you'll see it's actually 24th Street, the connection through Ferguson Park that is funded by the reinvestment zone. So just addressing that alignment. And then there are 8 mapping corrections, just where without getting too far into the weeds, you know, what was shown in the map needed to abut a property line, just a tweak. It doesn't affect any additional properties. It's just a matter of a mapping correction. And so the four major amendments that we're going to talk about, there are three in the Bel Air neighborhood plan, and Aaron alluded to those during the workshop, so I'll show you those. And then one related to the North Point Phase 1 subdivision along State Highway 317. And so starting with the Bel Air neighborhood plan, not going to spend a ton of time on this because I think Aaron presented it very well, but Shell Road is a major one. So it's currently a local street, but to actually make it a minor arterial and provide connectivity from 3rd Street all the way over the railroad and additional connectivity through East Temple, but also routing around Miller Park and between the cemeteries. And so on the left, you can see what that white current alignment looks like, the right angle turns that Aaron talked about. So straightening that out and making it a true thoroughfare. And then 4th Street and 10th Street that are currently local streets to classify those as community collectors, neighborhood collectors, and provide additional connectivity to Shell, but also through the park, providing additional access for neighbors. And then also North Point, Happy Valley is a proposed neighborhood collector connecting 317 to P Ridge. And you all will recall that when the zoning was discussed, this was brought up that this would be a reclassification from a community collector to a neighborhood collector. It would still include a wide sidewalk on one side of the street to provide that connectivity for pedestrians and bicyclists between those two major arterials of 317 and North P Ridge. So staff recommends approval, and this is to amend the comprehensive plan ordinance. And planning and zoning at their January 19th meeting recommended approval per staff recommendation 8-0. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Can we look at would you go back a few slides with 4th now coming through the park instead of dead ending into the park?
This one here, sir?
Yes. What's the thought behind that? We typically, I can think of another project that we're working on now where we're getting a road out of the park.
Right.
And now we're putting a road in a park.
Sure. and so that it actually lines up pretty well with the edge of the existing Miller Park.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you look at it comprehensively with the realignment of Shell, that also would allow for potential expansion of the park. And so right now, it's not bisecting the park. It would, all of those three taken in concert, 10th, 4th, and Shell would just allow additional connectivity through there and access to the park where it currently doesn't exist. So, but yes, it's a very good point, but that does not bisect the park. It does actually help enable future expansion if that's something that's envisioned.
Future expansion in the park.
In the park or of the park.
Of the park,
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
So obviously staff and, all parties have decided it's, safety is, those issues are taken care of and.
Yes, sir, or at least the concept of it, some of the details would have to be addressed during design, but parks and public works have all been consulted during this process. And I'd say most importantly, this came out of a desire from the neighborhood to, during the neighborhood planning process, to have that additional connectivity and access to the park for them, but also for citizens throughout the community.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Council, any other questions on this? All right, then at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. There being none, anybody on Zoom? I haven't asked that question tonight. We're okay. All right, and at this time, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 6.
I'll make a motion to approve item 6.
Second that motion.
Have a motion by Councilmember Walker and a second by Councilmember Long. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item 6 passes 5-0. Moving on to item number 7, which is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing an amendment and adopting the tax increment finance reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plans to align with the master plans, which includes appropriating bond proceeds, adjusting tax revenues, allocating funding for future debt service, operating expenditures, and public improvements for fiscal year 2021 through 2062. Ms. Bernard?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Got to get my pointer or my. Did someone else announce it? Yes, again, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a summary of, overview of the proposed financing plan and project plan amendment. It includes updated revenue estimates, added value from commercial and residential real properties, either updating those estimates or adding dollars or real property value for projects that have been recently announced or approved. We also we adjusted the timing and the amount of the bond issues, and those included expanded scope and updated cost estimates for 2 parking garages. Several items were on your agenda tonight related to the design of those. It also accelerates the construction of the outer loop from Windland to Central Parkway by moving the funding from 2022 to 2021. And we also added industrial park sewer extension to the FY 2021 issue. Also, for Crossroads Parks, there was funding added for the design for lighting pedestrian bridges and trails on Pepper Creek Trail, and added design and construction of screening for the maintenance building. Just looking at the proposed bond issues, there are 2 bond issues that were adjusted. Again, moving some of the, increasing the 2021 and decreasing the 2022 proposed issue. The 2021 issue is for a total of $33.5 million. Approximately, it includes the parking garage for First Street, parking garage Central Avenue, 4th Street for $11.2 million. Outer loop construction and construction admin design phase for Windland to McLean Parkway for $12.597 million. And then, as I mentioned, the industrial park extension is $1 million. Included for the 2022 issue, the projects are the outer loop I-35 to Windland for $15.8 million. Avenue C, MLK to 24th Street for $6.5 million. 24th Street at $2.5 million. East-West Gateway for $3.4 million, and downtown city center right-of-way of $2.5 million. Also, these bonds are supported solely by the revenues of the tax increment district or reinvestment zone. And as part of those revenue bonds, the covenants require you to establish a reserve fund, which is the average annual debt service for each issue, and the proceeds funds that reserve. Just a quick overview in the financing plan for 5 years total by project description of projects allocated in the master plan funding. The Temple Industrial Park, there's a total of $6.4 million. There's corporate campus, $4 million or $400,000. Crossroads Park, $467,000. For the outer loop, there's a total in the 5-year period of 37.8 million. Downtown area, 55.2 million. T-Med area, 491,000. Gateway, 6.7 million. And Airport Park, 6.7 million. Gateways, 17.9 million. And public improvements, which include land or right-of-way acquisition, of 19.1 million. For a total for 5 years funding in the master plan projects funding schedule of $144.6 million. Just quickly, when going through the total source and use of funds in the financing plan, we strive to keep a unallocated fund balance around the $2 million level in this plan. And before it accomplishes that, in 2024, it does jump up to 7.2 million, but that is being saved for complete the funding of a project in 2025. And within your agenda packet, you did include attachments, which were the detailed financing plan through 2062, a summary financing plan with detailed project plan through 2062, and then the master plan project funding that I just went over the totals by project area for 2021 through 2025. This is the first reading. The reinvestment zone board did approve this on February 10th. I'd be happy to answer or address any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions on this item? Okay. This item is also subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. Raise your hand on Zoom. Nothing. All right, very good. I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item number 7.
I move the adoption of item number 7, which is the reinvestment zone number 1 financing and project plan as presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item number 7 passes 5-0. Item number 8 reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with Matus Construction Limited of Belton for the construction of the water treatment plant membrane facility expansion in the amount of $44,608,188.70. Mr. Wilson.
See if I can work this time. Go ahead, next slide. Okay. All right. So this is a big project we've been waiting a long time for. Going to increase the capacity of the treatment plant, 2 treatment plants to 53 MGD, which meets our master plan projections for the year 2045. So it gets us out ahead of the game instead of trying to catch up. The drawing you see, the improvements are in red at the membrane plant. They actually start at our intake point on the Leon River, upgrading some of the pumps to pump the water up to the new improvements. Alan? So this wasn't a low bid process. This was competitive sealed proposals, which means you take into account pricing, reputation of the contractor, subcontractor, not only the firm, but identifying who's going to be on the job. Because oftentimes you'll get, a good contractor and maybe not their best personnel, but I think in this case, we're doing well. The low bid was $44.533 million, which is a little bit over our budget, our OPC. I think those are attributed just to the fact that the OPCs are over a year old, nearly a year old. I think we're going to see some more pricing increases this year as a result of what's been going on with the weather and with COVID. The engineer and staff recommend award to Matus Construction. They were not only the lowest bid, but we think the most qualified bidder. Blake Pitts, the president with Matus, is here. If you have any questions for Blake, and I think Tommy Valley with KPA is listening in on the internet. Contract duration is 24 months. Open to
Beginning when? Richard, beginning when?
tomorrow. They want to move in. They want to move in tomorrow.
That depends on what you vote on tonight.
But
Well,
24,
we have to wait for the contract and all
Yeah.
that, but they plan on, they want to move in and start doing.
but
the
24
preliminary thing.
months from approximately now, assuming it passes.
Yes.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Council? I don't think any of us know enough about treatment plants to have any relevant questions.
I know I like water.
Yeah. That's all we
Massachusetts has
need.
a very good reputation, so I think.
They,
we're in
they
good
do.
hands.
And we worked with them in the past and it's always been
Yeah.
good.
Very good. Thank you. All right, council, if there's no further discussion,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the authorization of this contract with Matoush Construction Company as presented.
Second it.
you have a motion by Councilmember Williams, a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item
So
number 8 passed.
Richard, that's tomorrow now.
That's right. It's time to get going.
Tomorrow for starting. Joking.
I do want to add one thing I didn't address, and if you saw on there was a builder's risk policy that we recommend approving. And that's to cover any damages that may occur during the construction process. And it protects us and the contractor. So if a building is under construction and there's a fire, theft, or some kind of vandalism, we're both protected. Something we've already paid for.
Very good. Thank you. So item number 8 passes 5-0.
Mayor, I know you guys know this, but I just want to reiterate that this is an extremely critical project for us. It's one of our, if not the largest capital project that we will be working on for quite some time. And it's a very important project. And so we're thrilled to be able to get it started. And we thank you for your support.
Moving on to item number 9 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of a passenger van from Grapevine DCJ LLC of Grapevine in the amount of $25,883. Almost said 25 million after that last one.
Don't do that.
We'll need a couple of train cars.
They would be thrilled.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
We kind of reviewed this in the council workshop, but this agenda item is, we received competitive sealed bids for 12 different vehicles on February 4th. There was one of the 6 bids. It was 6 bids, but 12 vehicles. One of the bids actually has a local preference option for your consideration. So the way our local preference policy works is staff will recommend the low bidder. But if it is a competitive sealed bid, which this was, and it's for an expenditure less than $500,000, and there is a local bidder located within the city limits that submits a local preference declaration with their bid, and their bid is within 5% of the lowest bid received, council can determine that there is an additional economic development opportunities that warrant awarding the bid to the local bidder. So in this particular case, the staff recommendation is to award the passenger van for the airport to Grapevine DCJ LLC in the amount of $25,883. But before you tonight is a local preference option to award the vehicle to Johnson Brothers Ford II LTD of Temple for a difference in price, increased price over Grapevines of $345.14. That's 1.33%. You can see there's a little bit different look to the vehicles, and we think actually the one with Johnson Brothers might be nice because of the headroom that we would get through the Ford Transit van. So your options for your motion tonight, option 1 is to award per council's recommendation and per policy to Grapevine, or option 2 would be to take the local preference option based on the economic development opportunities
that we think that we can derive out of awarding it to Johnson Brothers for the additional $345.14. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Is the delivery date the same either way you
It's,
go?
yeah, it's pretty much pretty consistent throughout the industry right now.
Very good.
Anything else? All right, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on item number 9.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to go with option number 2, award this contract to Johnson Brothers Ford, local preference, and the minimal amount over of 345, give or take, dollars.
For this, do we need the actual motion language read in properly?
Oh,
Okay,
sorry. I'll start again.
that's all right.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to award option 2, local preference option. In recognizing that Johnson Brothers Ford 2 Limited of Temple is a local vendor that offers the city the best combination of price and additional economic development opportunities under the city's local preference policy, I make a motion to purchase a passenger van from Johnson Brothers Ford 2 Limited of Temple in the amount of $26,228.14.
Have a motion by Councilmember Long, and we have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please cast your votes for item number 9. Very good. Item number 9 passes 5 votes to 0. Item number 10 is to consider adopting a resolution appointing one council member to the Hill Country Transit District Board. Ms. Myers.
Mayor and council, thank you. So when former council member Pilkington resigned, he left a spot on the Hill Country Transit District Board vacant. So you all appointed at that time Councilmember Walker to fill that unexpired term, which she has done. And that term is now coming to an end, and you will need to reappoint a council member to serve. It must be an elected official. So either reappointing Councilmember Walker or another one of you is necessary at this time. And so staff would ask that you consider appointing one of you to serve.
So I spoke with Councilmember Walker before the meeting, a little bit of arm twisting, and she's willing to continue unless somebody else wants to put their hand up. There being no hands. Congratulations. Very good.
It's my honor.
So do we actually need to formally nominate? Someone needs to say I nominate in their motion.
You would just need to say, I move to appoint Councilmember Walker to, yes.
There you go.
I move to appoint Councilmember Walker to
I
this
second.
position.
Fastest second in the West. We have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, if you would, please cast your vote.
Benefiting yourself.
Give vote for yourself.
Go ahead and cast your vote.
Not in any shape, form, or fashion.
Surprisingly, there's not a nay on there. So item number, I believe that was item number 10, passes 5-0. Councilmember Walker, thank you for that. Good. Before we draw this meeting to a close, I want to point out Jacob Sanchez tonight with the Temple Daily Telegram. This will be his last meeting with us. You're moving to Dallas? Fort Worth. Okay. Well, very good. Well, congratulations on your new job, and thank you for your service to us here. And I'm sure that your new employer will be better for you. If not, we'll see you back here. No, very good. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and this meeting is adjourned.